The 2026 FIFA World Cup was supposed to be a celebration unlike anything football had ever seen. The biggest tournament in history. 48 teams, 3 host nations, 104 matches spread across 12 cities. More football than any World Cup before it. And yet, just days before the opening kickoff on June 11th, something unexpected is happening. Stadiums that should be buzzing with sold-out energy still have thousands of unsold seats. Matches involving some of the world's most recognizable teams are showing gaps in the stands. And FIFA, the organization that claimed 1.5 years ago that demand was equivalent to 1,000 years of World Cups at once, is now quietly releasing last-minute ticket batches, facing legal investigations and watching images of empty sections circulate online before a single group stage ball has been kicked. So how did we get here? How does the largest sporting event ever organized arrive at its opening week with a fan attendance problem? That's what we're going to break down today, because this isn't a simple story. It's got ticket pricing, global travel costs, a new and controversial tournament format, legal probes, and some very uncomfortable questions about whether FIFA's own decisions created this situation. So what's really going on with World Cup 2026 and its unexpected fan no-show? Let's start with what we actually know, because the picture that's emerged over the last few weeks is quite striking. According to data tracked by independent tools like FIFA Ticket Scout and TicketData.com, at least 9 group stage matches in the United States currently have more than 1,000 tickets still available, with some showing well over 2,000 unsold seats just days out from the tournament. That's significant on its own, but some of the more headline-grabbing figures go even further. Reports from Dallas suggest that more than 350,000 tickets remain unsold across the 9 matches scheduled. At AT&T Stadium in Arlington, civic leaders in that city were reportedly surprised when those numbers were presented at a council meeting. The stadium that's set to host England's opening match against Croatia on June 17th still has tickets available across most seating blocks, with the cheapest currently listed at over £500 per seat. At MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, the venue that will host the final on July 19th, the picture is similarly complicated. The stadium already hosted its first World Cup match just recently, and that debut was described in multiple reports as being marked by 2 things: a transportation system that struggled badly to handle the crowd, and visible patches of empty seats inside one of the world's biggest arenas. Meanwhile, the USMNT opener against Paraguay at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, which was priced as one of the 3 most expensive games in the entire tournament, behind only the final and 1 semifinal, had nearly 30,000 seats still unsold as recently as April. And FIFA's response? A new last-minute sales phase, a sudden release of tens of thousands of additional tickets, and a spokesperson's statement describing group stage prices starting at $60 as, quote, a very competitive price point. The disconnect between that statement and the reality on the ground is what's driving the conversation right now. Here's where things get interesting. Because the unsold tickets aren't simply a story about low interest. Football interest in this World Cup is enormous. FIFA itself reported receiving more than 500 million ticket requests across sales phases. That's not a demand problem in any traditional sense. That's a price access problem. And those are very different things. The pricing structure FIFA chose for the 2026 World Cup was unlike anything seen at a previous tournament. For matches in the United States and Canada, FIFA abandoned the price caps it had used at previous World Cups. The result was a tiered model where the cheapest group stage seats started at $60, but the best Category 1 seats for high-profile matches were listed at over $1,000. For the final at MetLife, premium tickets reached $8,680. To put that number in context, the equivalent seat at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar cost roughly $1,600. That's a jump of more than 5 times in just one tournament cycle. Football Supporters Europe, the umbrella body representing fan groups from across the continent, described the pricing as extortionate and called for sales to be halted entirely. Their executive director said they were stunned by the figures. Their analysis showed that a supporter following their team through every match from the group stage to the final via official association. Channels would need to spend at least $6,900 just on tickets, before flights, accommodation, or any other cost. But that's only part of the story. FIFA also introduced dynamic pricing for the first time at a World Cup. That means ticket prices fluctuate based on demand in real time, like airline tickets. So even fans who were watching the official website carefully found that prices were shifting unpredictably. Some fans reported that prices had increased by the time they got to the checkout stage. Others found that the seat locations they expected didn't match what was actually delivered. That last point became so serious that the New York Attorney General and the New Jersey Attorney General issued formal subpoenas to FIFA as part of a joint investigation. The investigation is focused on ticketing practices for MetLife Stadium matches, with the authorities accusing FIFA of creating, in their words, a gauntlet of confusion, fake scarcity, and impossibly high prices. That's a significant phrase coming from state attorneys general in the country hosting the tournament. And it tells you something about how badly the relationship between FIFA and the fans who actually attend these matches has deteriorated in recent months. Now, this matters because World Cup empty seats are not entirely new, but the scale and context of what's happening in 2026 is different from anything we've seen before. At the 2018 World Cup in Russia, FIFA actually launched an investigation into empty seats at the Egypt versus Uruguay group match in Yekaterinburg. There were visible no-shows, despite nearly all tickets being reportedly sold. The issue there was geo-restricted ticket sales. Certain seats could only be purchased by Russian nationals, and some of those buyers simply didn't show up. That was a logistics and policy issue, not a pricing one. At the 2022 tournament in Qatar, there were questions about atmosphere and cultural fit, but the physical attendance at matches was generally solid. The country's small size meant fans could move between venues with relative ease, and the concentrated format helped maintain energy levels throughout. What makes 2026 fundamentally different is the scale of ambition and the geographic reality of the host. This is a three-country tournament spread across 12 cities in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. A fan following England from Los Angeles to New York to Dallas, for example, is covering distances larger than most entire countries. And that travel cost, layered on top of already high ticket prices and accommodation in major American cities, creates a total trip cost that is genuinely out of reach for many ordinary supporters. Think about it. A family of 4 flying from Europe, paying for hotels across multiple cities, buying tickets at current market rates and covering daily expenses could realistically be looking at a trip that costs $30,000 to $40,000 or more. That's not attending a football tournament. That's a luxury experience that most fans, even dedicated, longtime supporters, simply cannot afford. The bigger issue is that FIFA's format expansion from 32 to 48 teams, while designed to be more inclusive globally, created more matches than there is strong demand for in certain time slots and at certain price points. A World Cup game between 2 lower-profile nations priced at $400 a seat in a city that requires a domestic connecting flight to reach is going to have empty rows. That's not a football problem. That's a business model problem. And what makes the current situation particularly notable is that FIFA's own Club World Cup, which ran earlier this summer in the United States as a kind of warm-up event, already showed signs of weak attendance at several matches. Some games attracted crowds that were well under a quarter of stadium capacity. The warning signs were visible well before the main tournament arrived. So what does all of this mean for the people at the center of it, the players and the fans? For the players, the atmosphere inside a stadium matters more than most people who haven't played at that level fully appreciate. There's a direct relationship between crowd noise, energy, and performance. When sections of a 70 or 80,000 seat stadium sit visibly empty, it changes the environment. It flattens the experience. The best moments in World Cup history, the goals, the comebacks, the upsets, are inseparable from the roar of a packed stadium. Empty rows don't create that. Players who have spoken about the topic, and fan groups who've attended early matches at some of the venues, have noted that even 1 or 2,000 unsold seats in a venue creates a visual impression that's hard to ignore. At MetLife's first World Cup match, the visible patches of empty seats became one of the main stories coming out of the venue, not the football itself. For the fans who have managed to attend, the experience has been a mixed picture. Some have reported incredible atmospheres at sold-out or near-sold-out matches. Others have dealt with significant travel chaos, particularly at MetLife, where the transportation system reportedly failed to handle the volume of fans effectively on its World Cup debut, leaving people stranded or significantly delayed before and after the match. For international fans, particularly those from Africa, Asia, and parts of Latin America, the barriers to attend have proven even steeper. The combination of U.S. visa requirements, long-haul flight costs, and high ticket prices has meant that some fan bases whose teams are genuinely represented in the tournament have managed to send only a small fraction of the supporters that might otherwise have made the journey. There's a particular irony in that dynamic. FIFA's stated goal with the 48-team expansion was greater inclusion, giving more nations a seat at the table. But if the fans of those newly included nations can't afford to be in the stadium, the inclusion starts to feel incomplete. It's a tension that the tournament will have to navigate all the way through to July. So where does this go from here? And what might FIFA actually do in response? The most immediate thing to watch is whether the unsold ticket situation stabilizes or worsens as the tournament progresses. Historically, even tournaments that start with attendance questions tend to improve in the knockout rounds, when the stakes are higher and fan enthusiasm intensifies. If the big teams perform, if England, Brazil, Argentina, France, and the host nations progress, the atmosphere at knockout matches could be genuinely extraordinary, regardless of what happens in some group stage games. But the structural issues won't disappear just because the last 16 or quarterfinals are packed. The legal pressure on FIFA is unlikely to ease during the tournament. The joint investigation by the New York and New Jersey attorneys general is ongoing. There have been calls from fan groups for formal consultation and pricing reform. Football Supporters Europe has filed a complaint with the European Commission over the use of dynamic pricing. These aren't things that quietly resolve themselves once the matches start. The best-case scenario from here is relatively straightforward. Prices on resale platforms continue to soften, which they already have in some cases, with some tickets appearing on secondary markets for as little as $100, meaning that price-sensitive fans can still get in. Atmospheres build as the tournament progresses. The football itself takes over the narrative, and FIFA commits, at minimum, to a review of its ticketing approach before 2030. The more difficult scenario is one where images of empty seats at high-profile matches continue to circulate on social media, where transport failures at venues like MetLife become recurring stories, and where the gap between FIFA's marketing language and the actual fan experience becomes a defining legacy of the tournament. What FIFA does next will matter. Whether it adjusts prices meaningfully for remaining matches, whether it engages with fan groups and legal inquiries transparently, and whether it makes a genuine commitment to making future tournaments more accessible, all of that will shape how 2026 is ultimately remembered. What we do know is that the conversation about fan access, ticket pricing, and the true meaning of a global football tournament is not going away. It's going to be debated throughout this summer and almost certainly well beyond it. So here's where we land on June 5th, 2026, 6 days before the first ball is kicked. The 2026 World Cup is the biggest in football history by almost every measurable standard. 48 teams, 104 matches, 3 countries, hundreds of millions of tickets requested. And yet, with opening day approaching, some stadiums are carrying thousands of unsold seats. A legal investigation is targeting FIFA's ticketing operation, and fan groups across Europe and beyond are using words like extortion and betrayal to describe what's happened. None of this means the football won't be spectacular. It almost certainly will be. And none of this means the 2026 World Cup is going to fail. The scale and the excitement are real. And once the matches are underway, the energy will build. But the questions it raises about how FIFA manages the fan experience, about who this tournament is actually designed to serve, and about whether the biggest World Cup in history was truly built for football fans or for something else. Those questions aren't going away just because the whistle blows. And that's the conversation worth having. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think FIFA's ticket pricing crossed a line? Or is this just the cost of hosting in the most expensive sporting market in the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. And if you're one of the fans heading to a stadium this summer, wherever you are in the world, tell us which match you're going to. Let's hear from the people who made it happen. If you found this breakdown useful, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more football fans who are following this tournament closely. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to be covering every major story out of FIFA 2026, right through to the final on July 19th. This story is still developing. The tournament hasn't even started yet, and already there's more to unpack than most World Cups deliver in their entire run. As always, football never stays quiet for long. See you in the next one. Before you go, if you want to stay ahead of every major FIFA 2026 story as it breaks, and if this is your first time here, subscribe right now. We cover everything from World Cup logistics to tactical deep dives. And this tournament is only going to get bigger. See you there.